Hello and welcome to this Christmas edition of Politics Today. Sadly, it's going to be a Christmas like no one else would have possibly experienced with the COVID-19 pandemic and all of us having to deal with this and whether Christmas is on or whether it's not. But we'll be looking into the spiritual and political implications of COVID-19 Christmas this year. So to join me in this programme today, I'm joined by Robin Benson, who's a Christian political commentator, together with Brian Greenaway, is the UK director of Maoz Israel UK. So welcome to the programme. I'll start off with you, Robin. I mean, so, you know, as our viewers are watching this programme, it's Christmas Eve, and it should be a kind of very exciting time, particularly for young children, when you have that excitement of Christmas and the trees up and the presents around the tree and everything else. And when you see these dark, cold, wet nights, Christmas is a nice break. And my wife absolutely loves Christmas. I proposed to her on Christmas Eve. So, oh, wow. So for us, this is a special time. But this year is very different, isn't it, because of COVID-19? And months ago, the government announced how they were going to have a 5-day break that families across the British Isles could meet up and have Christmas together. But as of the recording of this programme, a week before Christmas Eve, it seems that this could be in jeopardy now, with the government under increasing pressure to have another lockdown to prevent families from getting together. What is your view on what we're seeing, really, and how COVID-19 has had a huge impact, not only on our political life, but also our family life as we're in Christmas Eve?
I think what we're facing at the minute, with all of the things that you just mentioned, you know, the headlines are there on people's, if they've got a smartphone with a news source on it, indicating what may be yet another turnaround that the government is going to have to implement on the whole issue of whether we can or can't even celebrate this particular festival at this time of the year. And again, I don't know about you, Brian, one of the things that has frustrated me really for all of this, almost a year now we've been battling with this, is that you get one set of so-called government experts who, come from a wide range of scientific and medical backgrounds, who say one thing, and then you've got another group of so-called experts, again with a wide range of medical and research backgrounds, who say something completely different. And the three of us are just lay people, and so we're stuck in the middle trying to figure out, well, who's right? And I, we were talking before we sat down to record this, that none of us would want to be politicians at this particular moment in time, because they're getting earache from both camps, particularly now over the possibility of having to literally close down Christmas at such a late stage in people's planning. And it is, if that happens, and I think it's probably a big if, and the government will be under lots of pressure not to do it, but the medics, there's 2 major medical journals have come out today with articles pleading with the government to have another shutdown, because the medics, or a certain proportion of the medics, are scared stiff that actually what's going to happen is that the already increasing infection rate is going to skyrocket. We've got into the mix now this mutation that was discussed in Parliament yesterday. And they don't know whether that's going to invalidate the vaccine. They don't know whether that's what's causing the uptick in infections in the London area in particular, because London will go into Tier 3 very soon. And so the whole thing is just it's another roller coaster of how are we going to respond? How are we going to deal? How are people going to deal with this great disappointment if things are closed down? That is probably the big question. And it will be frustrating and disappointing and irritating the general public no end that this level of uncertainty has been thrust into the potential of Christmas get-togethers that have been planned probably for weeks, if not months. So we're entering into another, I think, in some sense, emotionally, mentally difficult period for the whole population.
Absolutely. And Brian, warm welcome to Politics Today. It's your first time on the programme. So you are the director of Maoz Israel. Can you share for our viewers who don't know what Maoz does, the work of Maoz Israel?
Sure. Well, we've been in Israel now for over 40 years. Not me personally, but our ministry. And so we have a wide-ranging remit we're Messianic believers in Yeshua, and what we've actually been doing during this period of time is supporting families. So our strapline, if you like, is making believers strong in Israel. So whether we do that through teaching, whether we do it by translating books into Hebrew, good Christian books, whether it's by supporting congregations or helping musicians, believers, it's all different projects that we're involved in. So that's really our remit.
Excellent. And what are your plans for Christmas, knowing that we probably haven't faced a Christmas like this for 80 years since the start of the Second World War?
Yes, I know. It is very different, isn't it? We keep planning. We're talking to my father today, thinking, what's going to happen? Can they come? Because they've got health issues. So I think we just have to sort of listen to the government advice and make decisions. I think decisions are based in faith, isn't it? We have to make a faith decision, listen to what's happening, but then look to the Lord, really, for our guidance, really, and be wise. I think, need wisdom. And I think, to be honest with you, from a society point of view, maybe we haven't done enough in the past to protect the vulnerable, and it's a bit of a lesson for us there. So it's just thinking about those sort of things. But we are hoping to get the family together. If not, we'll be in connection through Zoom, probably, which everybody's got very familiar with.
And Robin, the potential of the government making a very last-minute announcement under huge pressure, and we've seen that this administration under Boris Johnson does cave into pressure and does do a lot of U-turns. So we could see, as of the recording of this programme, so it's difficult to tell where we are, that we could face another lockdown, or that the 5-day Christmas break gets put down to 1 or 2 or 3 days rather than 5 days. We're not sure yet, but we know there is huge amounting pressure, particularly from the government scientists, particularly from the SAGE group, saying that it's urgent that the government does something to stop this 5-day Christmas where people can get together from, 5 different families over the Christmas period. I'm not sure, but it's quite a high number. So what do you think the psychological impact on the nation will be, particularly knowing that so many people up and down this country, including Christians, haven't seen their loved ones all year, and were particularly looking forward to this Christmas, spending it with loved ones, knowing that they haven't been able to because of all the lockdowns we've been through and all the restrictions and everything else. And this gave them a glimmer of hope, and now it looks like there's pressure by the government to actually take this away from them.
I think, as I said before, it will create a very high levels of frustration and, in some cases, anger, but certainly beyond everything else, real disappointment. Particularly probably for the elderly who have been looking forward to being able to see children and grandchildren, maybe great-grandchildren, maybe for the first time in months, and children themselves, looking forward to some sort of highlight in the midst of what has been a very sort of up and down period of time, when they've been in school and then out of school and then in school and out of school and sometimes learning at home and some, we can see again from the data and the research that this whole period of time has had such a detrimental effect on the mental health of so many people, and particularly young people and children. And because Christmas has become such a highlight in the calendar in the Western world in particular, or the Westernized world, if a cold water, metaphorically speaking, is poured upon that, it is going to really hurt some people, to a very great degree. Never mind the ripple effects that it will have out in the economy as well. But as far as the mental emotional health, the potential is there for having really bad side effects.
Interesting, isn't it? You said, Simon, about the government changing their views or changing their guidance. After a number of the medical experts have said various things, I noticed the government minister saying, well, actually, this Rule 3 for the 5 days over Christmas, we didn't actually say you can go to your family. What we said was, if you need to go to your family. So they're looking on that side. They're saying this is the mental health side. So if you feel that as a family you need to be together. I thought, well, I don't remember hearing that before. But it seems that they are reacting to the medical advice and saying, well, actually, it's up to you. We're not going to take legal action against families that get together. So,
but isn't there a great danger? And this is a very dangerous or difficult situation the Conservative Party find themselves in, being the government handling the COVID-19 crisis. That if they ban Christmas and we go into another lockdown, as London and the South East has gone into Tier 3, and they're calling for even more harsher conditions now that the Conservative Party will be branded as the party that banned Christmas.
Oh, definitely.
And that's going to be a very big stigma that will be attached to the Conservative Party for decades to come. So isn't there a lot of kind of political considerations for themselves doing this, combining up with the kind of medical science as well from the advisors and trying to do really what's right for the country?
Yeah, I mean, I remember Jeremy Hunt saying, he was a previous candidate for the Conservative leadership. And I think he said early on in the crisis, I'm glad I didn't win because I wouldn't know how to deal with that. Yeah. And I heard him on the way in on the radio today, they were talking to him again and saying, you'd said, Mr. Hunt, that it's medical people who give the advice and politicians make the decision. What would be your decision? And he gave a politician's answer. In other words, he didn't answer it. But he said, yes, they've got to make that decision. And they were sort of pushing him for a decision. And it's in a way a poison chalice, isn't it?
It is, totally.
I mean, what would we do in these situations? You've got to protect people, but then you've got to protect the economy. You've got to help people. Mental health is a big issue, and we're going to see that fallout from that in the future.
Well, plus the fact you've also got the NHS, yet again, is seen to be under pressure. But the NHS is under pressure all the time. Yes, yeah. It's never not under pressure. And the thing, again, that I've noticed in the last sort of month or so is this whole business of people's operations and treatments getting shelved on a regular basis. And some people in dire straits, medically, emotionally, mentally, because they're not able to get the treatment and people dying, not of COVID or anything else, they're dying of the diseases that they contracted, and the NHS apparently cannot cope. And then yet again, you still then read the articles, and I'm not talking about the conspiracy theorist stuff on social media, you read the articles from reliable media sources that's saying, well, where's the proof that the hospitals are so inundated that they can't deal with these things? So again, we get conflicting stories, and you get to the point where you no longer know who to believe. Yes. And trust, which is what we've discussed on this program before, trust in the medics, trust in the government, trust in the scientific community is all being undermined constantly by these conflicting stories.
Absolutely. But Brian, in terms of Christianity and Christmas, we know, for example, and our view as well, that Jesus wasn't born on Christmas Day. It was more likely born on Yom Kippur Day, part of the high holidays. Sure. And we know the pagan attachment to Christianity, or not, to Christmas, sorry. And when we look at this and we view all of this, but isn't the fact that we're living in a kind of post-Christian society make this Christmas a little bit more important, primarily because this is the only chance that children really, or younger people, can actually get to know the story of the gospel of Jesus sending his son as a gift for us. How do you think that Christians can use Christmas in this COVID-19 situation as a means of sharing the gospel with the world at large?
Sure. I mean, it always has to be a faith reaction, doesn't it? We can get so affected by what we see on the news and the fear, and there's a great deal of fear, and fear is a great driver, isn't it? It is, but yeah, maybe it's sort of stripping us back a little bit. Maybe it's singing to ourselves, let's see what Christmas is all about. Now, I know that's always been a watchword in the past, it's always what's the real Christmas, what's the real meaning, etc. But maybe it's just made us think about that true story about Christ's birth and the fact that it happened. And I know many, in Israel it's not a big thing, as many will know, Christmas there at all, but the fact that we celebrate it is really important. And I think that, from a believer's point of view, in our country, we have always celebrated Christmas. I'm from a Jewish background, but we always celebrated Christmas. Of course, it took a lot more meaning at the age of 21 when I became a believer. But it is, I think that for parents, and from the Jewish perspective, is that faith is at home. It's not where you go to, it's not the church you go to, it's not the building you go to, it's not the study you go to, it's the home. So maybe it's making us think, we're at home, what's our responsibility? To teach our children, to bring up our family in the ways of the Lord, as the Bible tells us to do.
Absolutely. So I'm really intrigued to know what Robin's going to respond to this.
Since you called me and invited me to come and record this program, I have thought about it, and I thought, You know, I mean, I don't want to sound like the proverbial Grinch, okay? And I know
Christmas Grinch,
this program is going out on Christmas Eve and people are anticipating whatever they're anticipating, whatever happens between now and then. But again, I wonder, why has God allowed this? What is God saying in all of this? Never mind to the nation, but to his people in the midst of this. And I'm just throwing this idea out. I'm not saying this is from the Lord, I'm just throwing this idea. Maybe the Lord has actually gotten tired of us celebrating something that is no longer attached to his Son. It has become a materialistic, in some cases almost hedonistic, winter festival. And I'm not saying don't have it. If you want to have Saturnalia or Winterville or whatever, whatever you want to call it, go ahead and have it. Just don't put Jesus into it, because he never was in it in the first place, because of how it all came about. And increasingly, he's not been in it for a long, long time. And maybe it's time for us as believers actually to withdraw from it. I know that's a radical thing to say, but actually to withdraw from it. And if we really must celebrate his birth, because Jewish people don't celebrate birthdays. That's my understanding.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. So if we really must celebrate it, then let us as a believing community shift it to when it probably happened in the autumn, in and around the major festivals, if we really must celebrate it at all. And let the world get on with having parties and, sticking up lights and Christmas trees and all the rest of it if they want to for the 25th of December. Fine. Nobody's saying don't do it. Just don't bring Jesus into it, because he's no part of it any longer.
Well, I don't usually get involved in these discussions, but I kind of feel I have to speak up for some of our viewers here, Robin. And that is that we are living in a post-Christian society.
Yes.
And we're living in such a secular society now that and sadly, our children at schools and our education system are not being taught the gospel. Yep. And really, Christmas is the only time of year where secular people actually take note of this festival. I say this because there are nativity plays on that tell the gospel story. There are Christmas carols being played with really old Christmas songs. Yeah. And, maybe it's in time to put Christ back at the centre of this festival. And it has more significance this year because of the COVID-19 restrictions, that people haven't been able to see their families or loved ones at the time to get together, that this has been an integral part of British life for over thousands of years. And we know what happened when, for example, the Oliver Cromwell became the
Lord Protector.
Lord Protectorate. And the Puritans decided to ban Christmas because they deemed this as being pagan and didn't fit in with the new republic. What happened was that the British people then felt we'd sooner have a monarchy and still keep Christmas than have a republic and not have Christmas. So there is a huge
I totally understand the point that you just made. But at the time that happened, British society was to some degree or other far more Bible-based than it is now. As you say, we live in a post-Christian society. In fact, we live in a totally paganized society. We live in a humanistic society that is actually at its core, and you only have to look at what goes on in Westminster to see humanistic and anti-God. You see that in the legislation that this government and previous governments have put through that have attacked all sorts of aspects of what we would have normally looked upon as a Judeo-Christian foundation to our society. Okay, that's the reality. If the church, broad brush stroke, when using that word, if the remnant within the church who really believe the word of God and want to follow the Lord Jesus have a problem with that, then it's for us to rise up to the challenge, surely, then to present something as an alternative. Whereas the church just generally seems to be, in my estimation, going along willy-nilly with what the government and what the society is doing. We're not salt and light any longer. And maybe kicking against this commercialized, hedonistic winter festival is a way of being salt and light and saying, look, folk, enjoy it. Go do it. But Jesus actually is this person. And he's got nothing to do with what you do on the 25th of December around your Christmas tree. We're part of the olive tree, engrafted into the olive tree. Forget about the Norwegian spruce, and let's concentrate on the Jewish olive tree. And the picture that represents.
Absolutely. And Brian, as a Messianic Jewish believer, what are your thoughts on Robin's very radical proposal for Christians to ban Christmas?
It's quite funny, isn't it? Sort of coming from a Jewish perspective. Is coming from sort of a Jewish perspective. It's quite funny, isn't it? That I'm seeming like I'm the advocate for Christmas. But, I'm not at all advocate for the materialism, of course, and the hedonistic thing. But I always think that. Maybe you touched upon that, Simon. There's always got to be an opportunity to share the love of God, isn't it? There's got to be an opportunity to share the gospel. And a lot of churches use Christmas for that purpose. They know where they're going. They may glitz it up a bit. They'll put on a Christmas programme. But actually, they'll take the advantage. I'm a church leader in the UK as well, in South London. So, over Christmas, our programme and what we're doing will bring the gospel very clearly. It will present it. It will talk about Jesus coming, but also the fact that he's coming again during the second time, it says in Hebrews. To be clear on the word of God that the first coming precedes the second coming. And so within those messages, within those connecting with people who are not yet believers, is it all things to all men? Using that without getting into the hedonistic side? I know that in Israel, some congregations use Christmas because people are interested in it.
Yes,
they'll do Christmas events.
And Jewish people, particularly in Jerusalem, are very curious.
They're very curious.
And so there are congregations who will put, I think particularly of CMJ, in their compound, put on this Christmas festival, and they get hundreds and hundreds of Jewish people coming in to see what Christians do. So,
Same in Nazareth and Ashdod, I think. Yeah, definitely.
And then being in Haifa, I think, is the only place where they really celebrate Christmas, I think, in Israel, which is very strange.
Yeah, because it's just a normal day of the week, unless it's Shabbat. It's just a normal day of the week. Everybody goes about their business, except the Christians who are there either volunteering with NGOs or expats who are living there, and then they will try to do something. But generally speaking, it's a non-event in some respects.
With respect to this country.
Absolutely.
Which was great, actually, for the 2 years I was there.
if we step away from some of the hedonism, which I don't think is going to be allowed this year anyway, because of COVID-19 and the pubs closing anyway, so and the clubs closing, so that's not really a possibility that young people can go out on Christmas Eve and drink themselves into oblivion. And also the fact that that it's also about kind of family. This is a family time as well. That it's important for families. This is a time when people have a break over the Christmas and New Year period. It's a time of refreshment, but it's also a time to be with loved ones they probably haven't seen all this year. So surely the government has to recognise as well the importance of the mental health of the nation as well in actually allowing that to take place rather than listening to the scientists. And, if we all listen to the scientists, we're going to have a pretty awful life and a pretty awful existence.
Exactly. And I come back to the point that Brian made earlier. If the government goes ahead with this clampdown, it is going to inject fear, and in some cases total fear, into some family gatherings, and that's just going to destroy whatever possible positive outcome there would be of people gathering together. If that sort of fear, people are afraid to hug each other, say hello to it, touch each other. I mean, this is craziness, So I understand the inherent dangers that there are, because you don't want to be responsible for bringing this dreadful bug into the life of someone whose health is compromised. But on the other hand, you want to try and offer some sort of encouragement and uplift to those who are mentally stressed and hurting because of the isolation that they've had to contend with.
And Brian, as believers in Yeshua, whether we celebrate Christmas or not, it is an opportunity, isn't it, for us to show a difference to family members that are not saved and friends nearby, because there is a joy in our peace in our hearts. Now, one thing that this nation is suffering from right now is there's a real absence of peace. People are on edge. People are having kind of mental breakdowns. There is tension and conflict, primarily because people don't know where they stand anymore. They've had their freedoms curtailed this year because of COVID-19. We're not free to go where we want. We're not free to do what we want as we were as in February or in early March. So it's a completely different world that we're going in. So how important is it that as believers we can rise above essentially this COVID-19 crisis and show people the love of Christ and the peace that's in our hearts?
Yeah, I mean, there's three aspects, aren't there? God offers us peace from God, peace with God, and the peace of God. It's those three aspects that we have in our lives. And it's about orientation, isn't it, really? We talk about the scientific community, but actually as believers, we have a scientific worldview that probably 95% of this country doesn't have when it comes to the origins of the earth and its future and where it's going. You know, climate change isn't the future. God is the future. And he knows what's going to happen. So I think that having that orientation of God's word and being confident in that, and we talked also about hospitals, and I've had an operation delayed. My wife had a scan delayed. So on a personal level, we've experienced that as well in my family. But then I think to myself, well, we need to look to the Lord. And we believe that God heals. We believe that God's presence is with us. So it's actually coming down to what we believe, isn't it? It's a basic question. And if we live a life of faith, a life that demonstrates peace, and also living with what we know and what we don't know. That's about faith also, isn't it? We don't know what next year brings. We don't know what next week brings at the moment. But actually it's about saying, well, God, I put my confidence and my trust in you. It speaks volumes to family members and friends.
Yes.
30 seconds, Robin.
Yeah, well, I mean, so that in the end, what we're saying is that God is in control.
Yes.
In absolute sovereign control of everything that's going on. And if that's the case, then I come back to what I said earlier on. We need to be asking God, what are you doing? Why are you allowing this? What do you want us to be doing with what you're doing?
Brian, Robin, thank you so much for being my guest on this Christmas edition of Politics Today. I won't call it a Christmas special because it's a difficult Christmas for everyone. And I want to thank you for watching this programme, particularly on Christmas Eve, when we know that families are getting together, or hopefully they're getting together this Christmas to remember the Saviour of the world, who is God's gift to mankind. So from all of us, we'd love to wish you all a very happy Christmas and New Year. And just remember, let's put Jesus right in the centre of everything that we're doing during this Christmas season, because without him, we're all going to struggle. So let's look up, because our redemption draws near. I want to thank you for watching this Christmas edition of Politics Today.